Here we are, Sal Hernandez on the Iron Sights podcast. Sal, welcome to the show, man.
First of all, good morning, and thanks for having me on.
It is morning. Yeah. It is a gorgeous morning. We were up here in Idaho at the Defender Ranch. For those who are listening and don't know who that is or what that is, if you know, Tier 1 Concealed, make amazing holsters.
Oh, yeah.
And have been in the industry a long time. This is their spot. Jared has been gracious enough to let us come out here and hang out with the Extremist Performance crew. I think there's 6 of us, 7 of us total.
Yeah.
And we've been up here just shooting and enjoying the scenery and just been able to hang out with the dudes, which has been a really good time.
Defender Ranch, a.k.a. Shooter's Heaven.
Oh, my God. Like, I heard about it. Like, it's legendary. And for people that are like, yeah, I've heard, it's everything you heard and more. Yeah. I mean, we've had the opportunity to, the one bay, which has the turf bay, I think that thing's probably 100 yards wide and 100 yards long. And it looks up onto basically up the hillside up until like the Rock Mesa area. And then on the other side of the canyon, same thing. There's Connex boxes full of targets, and
we're shooting from some of the caves yesterday.
Yeah, we got to do so. We've been shooting pistols, we've been shooting carbines, we've been getting out to distance. I mean, you can get out to a mile out here.
Yeah.
I'm not shooting that far, but no, we're punching out pretty far with the gas guns.
Oh yeah,
and having fun. So it is morning. This is the last day here. I'm a little, I don't know if I'm bummed to leave or like if I'm ready to go home yet. We'll find out in a couple hours. We'll see how this interview goes.
Yeah.
But it's been good to hang out with you. So real quick, I met you like in person back in about April as a guest of the IEP crew at the Texas Tactical Police Officers Association conference, which was just outside of Austin, I guess, this last year. And so I got to spend time just kind of getting to know you kind of in a social setting. That's part of that conference is people hanging out and getting together. Oh, yeah. You were there as both an IEP rep, but also a representative, and we're going to get a representative of law enforcement. We'll get into that. You are, you're law enforcement officer. I'll let you kind of tell that story. And then also I got to see you teach, which is the second time I've got to see you teach. The first time I actually shook your hand, I don't think we exchanged 2 words because I was just observing at the Alameda.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, tactical performance lab that you guys were putting on. That was kind of fast and furious. Then I interviewed Jake in the afternoon, and then we got out. We got a quick bite, but you guys were kind of late getting there, and then I had to bail. So it's been a long time coming for me, man.
It has, yeah.
So here we are. So that's kind of my how do I know Sal. But the other way I know you is through social media a little bit and the things that you do as an athlete, which to me has always been very impressive that you've been able to basically be a high level or high performing athlete in the things that you compete in. We'll talk about that. But also as a full-time, police officer and the things that you do there and all the extra duties that you do around that place. So I want to know all about it, man. So you can start wherever you want, but catch me up on kind of who is Sal Hernandez and what don't I know about him yet?
Well, I am the third. So I am Sal the third.
Gotcha.
Born and raised in a small town in Woodland, California. I know you're from
That's right.
California.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah,
so
I forgot.
Born and raised, spent my whole childhood there. Played baseball in college, and that's what brought me out to Texas. So I left Woodland, Northern California at about 19 years old, and then moved to Texas, started playing baseball there, and I grew up playing baseball my entire life. Since I was 3 years old, my parents put me in sports, and that's all I knew. I feel like I didn't have a choice. I just jumped right into sports and got very competitive with that. I literally traveled all over the U.S. as a young kid.
Wow.
Yeah, I played hockey too. So I was traveling to Florida, to Minnesota, tried out for the junior team USA team, played baseball, tried out for the junior team USA team. And was very competitive. It was literally all I wanted to do was be either a pro hockey player or a pro baseball player.
Okay, this pulls some of the pieces together for me.
I would have posters of like guys I idolized in my room, like just all over my room. It was like, I want to be like this guy. And I remember just being in love with both sports. And it was hard to find balance as a young kid because I loved playing both and I had close friends in both sports. But what drew me to baseball was all my local friends in my hometown were right there. So I got to see them all the time. So that's what kind of pulled me away from hockey.
Which is, traveling constantly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I live in San Jose, California, and like for a long time, and I don't know if it's still the way it is, the Sharks organization had the fastest growing hockey organization, like youth and I don't know what you call like amateur hockey association in the entire country, which blew my mind.
Yep.
But when I, like over time, like we get a lot of clients coming through the gym, like that would move there.
Yeah.
So that their kids could play in that organization. And then they were constantly on the road. And so part of that was cool, but part of it I was like, maybe we do a little less hockey.
Yeah.
We do a little bit more being a kid or let them do other stuff like play baseball and stuff.
Yeah. It was like looking back then, I just couldn't believe the opportunity I had as a kid to do all that. And my parents worked their butts off.
Yeah.
Like, if they didn't work overtime, my dad worked in a prison, so he was a correction officer.
Okay.
And he would work a lot of overtime to pay for my sports and my sister's sports. My sisters were gymnasts and volleyball and volleyball and gymnastics and soccer. And I feel like my parents were pretty athletic too. So kind of watching them grow up, play sports was like, I idoled them. I was like, man, my dad's so cool. You know, he's playing sports. He's
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it was cool kind of seeing him do what he loves.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that passion translated to me.
Yeah. Well, again, that connects a lot of dots for me and kind of see how I see you handling yourself both in person and then just, you know, again, you have a little bit of an online personality. So, okay. So you grow up as an athlete. Tell me about how you were as a student.
I had to be a good student because my parents were like, especially my mom, they were on my butt. It was like, they were always checking my grades. And I didn't like school, I'll be honest. I definitely was, all my mind went to baseball and hockey. It was like, everything was like, hey, I just want to get out of class so I can go take batting practice or go hang out with the guys on the field. And yeah, I mean, I did really good in school. I had a really high GPA. I've never failed a class. So it was pretty, I think for me, the push was I wanted to go play Division I baseball. And I was like, I have to have good grades.
You know, you got to get it done in the classroom. Yeah.
So it was really important to me. I think I became a better student in college because that's when I started getting more mature and realizing, wow, like life's getting serious.
So when do you realize that baseball isn't going to be the long term for you and it's time to think about something different?
My senior year of college. Yeah, it was a tough year because that's when I realized that and scouts would talk to me and I was really hoping to play pro baseball and I had opportunities to play after college in like professional leagues, but not affiliated with the major leagues. So that really was a decision I didn't want to make or didn't want to do because I had friends that did that and they weren't getting paid anything. They're living in somebody else's house. And
it's a rough deal.
Yeah, and even in the minor leagues is a rough deal. I have a lot of friends that went to the minor leagues and just the major leagues taking pay cuts from them popping up with bases loaded. And it's just a tough lifestyle. You know, people see the guys in the major leagues and they're like, oh, that's what I want to do. But they don't realize the journey that it takes and all the sacrifices you have to make. But kind of going back to the question was my senior year, we were playing in it was a regional or a conference championship. And I remember it was our last game against Mississippi. Who was it?
Wait, where were you playing?
So I played at Prairie View A&M my last 2 years. I played at Solano Community College my first 2 years.
Right, yeah, I know about that one.
Yeah, 2 and 2. And yeah, it was pretty cool because one of my teammates, we played at Solano and then he went to Prairie View and now he works for Harris County and I work for San Antonio.
Is that right? Okay.
And then we competed against each other, the SWAT comps.
Wow, full circle.
It's freaking crazy. It's
nuts.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, that last game, I remember I bawled my eyes out. I've never cried that much in my life.
Because you just knew this was the last one.
I knew it was it. Yeah.
I didn't take football very far. I took it far enough, and I didn't have that experience. But I do remember feeling that at one point, going, I'm done. I'm never going to play another game, and then having this energy still having this energy to do something, but not having any place to put it. Like I was going to the gym, I'd already spend, 2 hours a day, at the gym or 3 hours a day at the gym doing something to prep for that something else. Yeah. Right. And then all of a sudden, like there's no purpose there anymore. Then it was like, now what am I working out for? Right. And then, so I had to find some place to put it. And there was a time there I was a little bit lost and, then there's, at that time in my life, and I think that time in history, like bodybuilding seemed like the next place to put it. So I freaking dabbled in that a little bit, which was stupid. But I learned a lot, but like there was no chance I was ever going to be, able to do that even at a, at a semi-professional level. But that's where my head was, with playing sports and stuff too. So I get that, like just being like the end of the road is here. I think a lot of people can relate to that. And then having to make a decision on what's next. So did you know you wanted to be a police officer?
No,
like, was this a secondary plan B at any point in your life?
Yeah, and it wasn't even police officer. It was like just a job in law enforcement. It was like, didn't know anything, the difference between correction really too much and police. I knew that my dad worked in a prison and I've taken tours there at a young age. And I was like, well, it's a job, it'd be cool to hearing his stories always got me pumped up for the job. Watching TV shows, you know, of like cop shows always seemed pretty cool. You know, obviously they hype it up to all the extremes, you know, and people don't see what actually they do on a regular basis. But yeah, I hated baseball for a while. After that game, I hated it. I couldn't watch it on TV. You can ask my wife. Back then, she was my girlfriend. But I couldn't watch it at all. Didn't want to be around it. Threw all my bats and all my gear like in a spot, and I didn't see them for years.
Wow.
Yeah, it took me a while to kind of overcome that and like the sport again, and actually respect. Like, man, this was something I did for a long time. So
what were you doing physically to kind of replace that, if anything?
So I was always a thick guy. Like when I played baseball, I wanted to be heavy so I could have more power. And I applied. It's actually kind of funny. So I applied to almost every big police department in Texas right after my college game. I was like, okay, I need a job now because what am I going to do? I'm going to go back to Woodland and live there and not do anything and live with my parents. So I applied to all the major departments in Texas, including some small ones. Man, I lucked out with San Antonio. Honestly, I got lucky. And 3 months later, I was starting the police academy. And I was lucky because my wife was a cross-country runner. And I knew in police academies, they're notorious for running. So I had ran all summer, the most I've ever ran in my life. And I lost some weight. And I really fast at long distance running.
Oh, you found out then?
I found out then. Yeah, so I found out really quick. I went back home. Then they were like, hey, you have to come back and take the test. I was like, oh, crap. So I came back in. I did all the written, the oral board, forgot what else, the PT test.
Okay.
And then the background. I did all that there. Went back home, came back a month later, and I finished the process. And like 2 weeks later, they're like, hey, you're accepted. You're starting in September.
You got the call.
Got the call. It was so fast. And nowadays, they're not that fast. I was lucky back then. And so, you know, I started the academy in September, and it was like, wow, it was a fast turnaround from college to that. It was a huge transition.
Yeah, I mean, there's no life in between there. That's a lot. How old are you at the time?
I was 23 at the time, okay, 23. So you're
still a very young man.
Super young. I think back then, I'm like, wow, I was a huge mindset difference and immaturity, like back then to now.
Yeah, so it does take longer from what I understand. There's a lot of places require a degree, like you have to get a degree. So there's some level of work that you have to put on. I know there's a lot of guys that, you know, a lot of people are like, as soon as they're 21, they're applying, and there's still departments that do that. Yeah. And they'll pull you in with a high school GED, you know, kind of thing. But I guess my point of that is like, yeah, there's a lot to learn very fast. What were the biggest lessons that you learned right out of the gate?
Living on my own. Like,
so that's crazy that you're going out, you're going to be responding to calls like where there's domestic, disputes going on. You haven't even lived basically by yourself yet to understand what that's like.
Yeah, in college, you know, I had roommates and kind of living on my own. I'm like, wow, like this is it. Like,
that's wild.
Yeah, and you know, in college it was easier to get up, and you know, I always had my classes later. But in the academy, we were starting super early. I remember getting up at like 5 a.m. every day, getting there like an hour early because I didn't want to be late, and then staying 2 hours late to study and everything. And it was a huge shift for me. And my roommate was actually from New York. So we had just met, literally like, hey, how's it going? I'm Sal. I was like, hey, I'm Trey. It's like,
oh, in the academy.
In the academy.
Gotcha.
So I had a roommate in the academy, and he was from New York, from California, and we got to meet in Texas. And yeah, it was a fun academy for me. Some of my classmates that were older, that were out of the military, were like, man, this sucks. I hate it. Like, it feels like boot camp again. But for me, I was prepared mentally and physically. So to me, it was just like, man, this is fun. I'm getting paid to do this.
It's like it's being a student athlete all over.
Yeah,
at
exactly.
Some level, which I think comes around here in a second in terms of understanding the athlete's mindset, but also the student's mindset, and not just trying to get through it. Yeah, but understanding how to get something out of it. And I think when you do that, you can enjoy stuff. I imagine a lot of it sucks. Like, but if like the physical part isn't hard for you.
No, I was ready to run. I was 165 pounds. I was like,
let's go.
15 miles right now at a 7-minute pace, easy. Like I was a really good runner then. And yeah, I remember just being really prepared physically for all the running we had to do.
So actually just staying on that topic for just a second, I mean, I think in terms of obviously being a good student, but more importantly, if you're going through that situation, there's so much around. I mean, in the work that, you know, doing sort of with IEP right now, it's around the physical piece. And not a lot. And I've had lots of conversations lately with folks in the industry, you know, and what you do on the combative side of things, but, you know, on the firearms, obviously, side of things as well. And I'm talking the physical fitness piece. The physical fitness piece is really like the base of all of it. If that isn't there, you kind of suffer everywhere else.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
And you don't have to be perfect at all of it, but there's some base level stuff that would put you in a much better position to not be suffering and then be able to get better, because we all have deficiencies and things we could be doing better. But then when you step over to the other side of all the things that a police officer has to do, and particularly in the academy, what they have to learn, what they have to be ready for from again, like I'm living on my own for the first time. That presents a lot of stress, or for some people being away from their family, you know, maybe they're married, they got kids, they got liabilities or whatever, and they're in the academy and they're away from it. If you are suffering physically, I would imagine that the emotional and psychological suffering that comes along with that just piles and is piling on. Like, how much are you really retaining? What are you really taking away from that, except for this sucks, right? And I just have to get through it, versus let's go. Like, I'm here for this.
Yeah, we had people quit the first day, the first week, second week, and I'm like, dude, what the heck? We're getting paid to do this. I remember getting my first paycheck was $990, and I was so amped up. I remember it was like, this is what it's like.
The guy you've been eating on the cafeteria card for the last 4 years.
Man, I was so pumped up. And I just remember thinking, like, how many people quit? And it happens every class. Now, you know, still to this day, there's 5 to 10 people that'll quit in a matter of 2 to 3 months.
Are you part of that process at all at your current agency? Like the academy process or at all? Yeah, okay.
No.
Yeah. All right, so you get through the academy, you come out the other side. What's it like?
Crazy. Felt weird carrying a loaded gun for the first time. Because I come from California, didn't grow up around guns, wasn't into hunting. You know, my dad was a correction officer, but he didn't own any firearms. So I get done. I remember my first time getting off the FTO rides on my own. Super nervous. I could feel my heart pounding out of my chest through my vest. And I was like, whoa, calm down. Like, what the heck? Like, dude, chill. Like, you've done this already with your FTO. But I was on my own now. And there was a call for a disturbance. Like, hey, 2 males in the parking lot arguing, you know, and yelling at each other, you know. And now I think it was like, my call sign was like 6221. And I remember I was like, I see it and they assigned me. I'm like, wow, it's time to go.
It's real.
This is real. And I'm like, wow, like my gun's here, taser's here, handcuffs. And I remember just thinking so many times, like, okay, you know, got to approach it this way, and just kind of rewriting the scenario so many times, like, what if this happens? What if this? And then finally it's time for me to leave the substation. I remember I'm like, I could feel it just pounding.
Here we go.
And I'm like, all right, just take a deep breath. And I get there, and then, you know, I get in a rhythm, and I'll never forget that moment.
Was it about is it about the training that you've been through? Like, do you just, you hear this, I just revert back to the training, or did all of that go out the window and you somehow came up with some other way to deal with this situation? Or what was the thing that, I guess, how did that situation end, and what was the thing that took it there?
So in the academy, I think we have a really good academy at preparing cadets to become officers, because it's an academy where only San Antonio police officers can go to.
Okay.
So if you want to be an officer in our department, you have to go to this 34-week academy. And our instructors are very good. Our firearms instructors, our tactics instructors, and even PT. And they prepare us very well for all types of scenarios with simulations, driving. So I came out feeling pretty confident, and especially going through 3 months of FTO rides, I felt confident. But once you're on your own, it's like you don't have somebody here that's can help you out.
Right.
And me being so young back then, I didn't have a whole lot of life experience. So I was kind of learning everything as a young officer.
Trying to get that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for me, what really helped me as a young officer was being able to talk to people like this. I didn't try to yell at people and say, hey, do this, and trying to, like, you know, flex on guys and talk to people like crap. Like, I try to talk to people the way I wanted to be talked to. So I always had a really good rapport with people that were criminals, you know, people that were breaking the law, and they would tell me things, you know, and then I would be able to call a detective and, you know, use them as a CI, or get information about things that they don't, you know, that nobody else could get information from. And I think that helped me a lot, was just being able to talk to people.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that. So how does this progress for you as an officer? I mean, going through your skills, and I'm sure relationship building, right, is an important part of this process in terms of where you're at now. What can you tell me? Yeah.
So I didn't have any family back then in San Antonio. No friends, really, just my academy classmates. So I built friendships along the way. My coworkers, and I feel like I'm pretty easy to get along with. I don't really get mad at anything unless it's like something crazy, unsafe. But
I'd agree with that to this point.
yeah,
I don't know if I could see you getting mad, but I'm sure you do. But
yeah, but kind of building friendships along the way. I wanted to join the gang unit because my dad did gang stuff in the prisons, so that always sparked my interest.
Got it.
He would always send me like, oh, these tattoos, and like he can identify a gang member like a mile away, I feel like. So he would always share that knowledge with me. And 1 year on from the moment I got off FTO to this time, I put in for a unit called Problem-Oriented Policing. It's basically like a street crimes unit.
Okay.
They ride doubled up and they just go around looking for people doing shady things, right? And trying to be proactive. Mm-hmm. So they don't have to handle patrol calls. All their job is to go into a high crime area, drive around, and just pay attention to people doing shady things, trying to break the law.
And this is just a year into this for you?
A year. Okay. I got asked. People were like, so we have a downtown jail called the Magistrates. That's where you go if you take somebody that you're arresting. Well, I would always see guys from that unit at the jail. And they would say, dude, you're always here, man. Like, what do you got? I'm like, oh, I got this, whatever. Like, hey, you should put in for the unit. I'm like, I only have a year on. They're like, so what? We like young officers. And I'm thinking, like, there's no way I'll get this job on this
Interesting.
Unit. So I put in for it. I was fortunate there was 8 openings, so I got that spot in the unit. If there wasn't 8, I wouldn't have got it because there was way better officers than me.
I hear you.
And that really started molding my career. I was there for 3 years, no, 2 years. Yeah, 3 years after that. I had seen some SWAT guys at the academy working out. I was there for in-service, and one of them was like, hey, what's your name? And I was like, hey, I'm Sal. And he was like, hey, you should come to our SWAT school. And I was like, SWAT school? Like, and I wasn't interested in doing SWAT at all. It was just like, those are all Navy SEALs and like Marine, recon guys. And mm-hmm. That's what my mindset was. Like, I can never get selected for that because I don't have a prior special forces background or prior military background. And I was shocked when they're like, man, they're interested in me going to the SWAT school. Cool. So I put in for the SWAT school. And that's when I realized I was like, this is something cool. I feel like I'm playing baseball again. I'm like, the camaraderie really sparked my interest.
I knew that. I saw that coming. The interesting part about this is the not knowing, mm-hmm. right? And I also sense a little bit of like imposter syndrome in that, like you're doing a good job. You don't know anything else, but go out and do work, go through the process, work hard, do the things. This is my job, much like an athlete, a good athlete or a successful athlete would do. Then that gets taken away. And then you're put in a position where you don't really know. There's not like a roadmap. It's very new. And then all of a sudden, people are kind of telling you, I would imagine you just don't know any better. Yeah. If I'm being honest, Sal, that's kind of what I'm getting from you. Like, you just did Sal, yeah. right? As a police officer now, former baseball player, if you want to put it that way. And it's working out for you because people are telling you they're noticing the work and that you're doing work and you're being successful with it. Attitude's probably a lot. Yeah, has a lot to do with it. I'm sure they're checking in like, hey, what do you know about this guy? Like, if you don't have any enemies or haven't made any yet, that's going to be helpful.
I'll tell you what, it's harder to get on our SWAT team than it is to get on the department. We do such a good background check. Our standards are higher physically and in the shooting. And I feel like it's way harder to get on our team than it is to join the department. So when I made it, I didn't realize the process I went through.
Yeah. So again, going through that, like kind of this, forgive me, but this ignorance of like, I have no idea about this, but if they're telling me maybe I should give this a try kind of thing. And then you coming out the other end successful, I think that's an awesome story, actually.
It was crazy because there, when a vacancy, one guy has to leave the team basically for there to be a vacancy. Mm-hmm. So you can't just put in for it if there's nobody leaving.
Is there a limitation in terms of how long you can be on the team?
No, there isn't.
Yeah, I know a lot of departments do that.
Yeah, I've heard of that. And thank God ours doesn't because we have guys that have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge on the team. And without those guys, it'd be, I think we'd struggle a bit on some operations.
So I'm doing math right now. And what we're talking about is you're probably like 25 years old, 26 years old.
No, so I graduated the academy at 24.
Oh, okay.
I tried out for the team at 28.
Yeah. So what's the average age?
I would say now it's probably 35 to 37.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So you're a young buck.
I was young and I was so immature back then. Like, not so immature, but in my mind, like seeing myself then to now, it's like, wow, there was a lot of lessons that need to be learned on the way, a lot. And I feel like I'm so thankful for the guys back then, because I feel like they kind of molded me into a young adult. Like the lessons I learned through them, check my ego, check these boxes of like, hey, dude, you're doing this wrong. Like, you need to fix it. And like, they handled it like a man, not just like, hey, let me text him and just like kind of like recommend this. Like, no, there was a lot of face-to-face talks. And yeah, I'm just thankful. Like, I can't believe the opportunity I had then to basically become a young man through guys that have done a lot of crazy things in their life. And then, you know, just those steps along the way kind of molded me now.
How long has it been?
So I've been on the team 8 years now.
Wow.
Police officer 12.
So now you're one of those, would you consider yourself a veteran?
They say like, oh yes, you know, like, hey, senior guys. And they always look at me and a few other guys. And I'm like,
you don't feel that way?
I still don't feel that way. No, I still feel young, because there is some guys on the team that are new, that are my age. They're 36 years old. And
they just had that much longer in policing than you, though.
They waited a long time to try out, or they had 3 tryouts. They didn't make it. And finally, the 4th one they did. I was fortunate that a spot opened up and I made that with my first tryout. Usually it happens like 2nd, 3rd, or 4th tryout. And I was just fortunate that I was picked.
I hear you being very humble. I mean, again, you were essentially recruited to some extent. And, you know, again, you have to pass a lot of different tests, both probably some that are very obvious and some that aren't. So I appreciate the humbleness, but, you know, you're probably there for reasons that people probably are picking up from what they're learning about you right now. I wonder, so stepping away from the police work, just talking about continuing to be an athlete. What's going on like with the Sal the athlete part during this journey that we've been talking about? So
going back to college, I hated baseball after then. I got into jiu-jitsu and MMA.
Okay.
So I knew I was going to be a police officer. I knew that I had to learn how to fight better. I had boxed at a young age, so I knew how to box. I felt like I was pretty confident. And it's like, hey, it's time to learn more. So I want to learn how to actually like take people to the ground and like not have to use my fist and my elbows. So I got into jiu-jitsu and MMA really hardcore. Like I was competing and I was actually hoping to do like an MMA fight. But then I realized that I had a couple broken noses, torn meniscus, and like, it was like.
And you need to be an adult in a police, like you had a job, yeah.
I was like, I can't show up to the academy with black eyes. Yeah. So I cut out the striking of MMA and I focused on jiu-jitsu and wrestling. Okay. And I loved wrestling. And after kind of doing it so I made it to a purple belt in jiu-jitsu and I competed at a pretty high level for that. And I realized I was like, man, I should have wrestled in high school. I feel like I would have been a really good wrestler because I just had the speed and I think the aggression to take people down. So, and also being shorter helps. But I really love the competition part of jiu-jitsu and wrestling. Yeah, it's very individual. So, versus the team sport of baseball, which and that was different for me. It's just me fighting this guy. It's not a group of us kind of backing me up. It's just me and this guy. Who's gonna go home? Who's gonna lose? And that was my mindset then, was training for that. So I spent a lot of my time focusing on jiu-jitsu and trying to get better and trying to be a high-level competitor in that for pretty much the majority of my police career. You still doing it? Not anymore because of tactical games. Yeah. So we're going to get into that in a second. So, all right. So there is some level of competition that you found. Oh, yeah. But you're recognizing probably not a good idea for me to stay at this level. So I got to modify and adjust a little bit. And that keeps going for you. So, all right. So when does, you mentioned going through the academy, really, those are your first experiences, your first real experience with firearms and shooting. Oh, man. So when does the shooting piece really pick up for you? Is it once the tactical games comes around? Because I do want to talk about that. Where does it enter the picture outside of, obviously now you're on the SWAT team, so there's that. What comes first? What can you tell me? So I remember trying for the team, thinking, oh, I'm a pretty good pistol shooter, because all you see is other patrol guys at the range, and you're like, I'm better than him, better than her, right. All these other officers. I make the team my first tryouts of Firearms Day. I remember I'm shooting next to some of the better guys on the team. I remember we're shooting. I'm like, these guys are on a different world than me. And I was like, I thought I was good. And I was like, I suck big time. And my mindset then was like, I don't want to be the weak link on the team. So I would go to the range on my own and put in work. Back then, I didn't know how to train. It's like, oh, I'm just going to shoot from the 25. I'm going to go shoot from the 7 and just kind of shooting rounds out of the holster. I had no clue on how to train like I do now. So I was lucky on the team, made the team in 2016, I believe. And I can't remember the time frame. You said 8 years? Yeah. Yeah, it would have been more like, 25, something like that. Okay. So made the team. My first year on the team, not even, coming up on like 8 months, there's a SWAT competition called TTPOA. Yeah. Texas Tactical Police Officers Association. They do a really good job with that. They do. And back then, guys were legends on the team that won that competition. We have posters and trophies all over our office. I need to take you there sometime, but
I'd love to go. Yeah.
I feel like I walk into a Hall of Fame when I go there because like all the trophies from the 80s and 90s, like before I was born, and all the pictures of like the guys that were way before my time are in there. And it's like you get the chills every time you go in there. So competition is huge on our team.
Right.
And I remember
there's a legacy there. Yeah.
Huge. I remember coming into the office and like they were talking about the competition. Like, hey, Sal, like my partner then was like, hey, Sal, would you be interested in competing? I'm like,
are you serious?
I was like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, and I
show me where to sign.
And I only got that spot through attrition because nobody else wanted to do it. Otherwise, there's no way I would have been like selected for that team.
This is a common theme I hear coming out of your mouth, man. But
I'm serious.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
I am 100% serious. Like back then, I was like, heck yeah, I want to do it. And then I was like, there's way better dudes than me. They just didn't want to do it because they were like, you know, we've done it for 7 or 8 years now.
Okay.
Like our time is gone. Now it's your guys' time. If there was other younger guys on the team, like there is now, those dudes would have beat me out for the spot for sure. So my partner then was like, hey, I want you just to run the O course. Because apparently there's 3 events, then the O course.
Gotcha.
Like, hey, all you're gonna do is the O course because you're fast. I was like, perfect. You know, I'll be whatever, you know, I'll do whatever you want me to do.
Put me in, coach. Yeah.
So we start training for it. And I remember just kind of picking up shooting faster than what I expected, you know, especially shooting a rifle. And beat out a guy that was supposed to be the top 5 because 5 compete. And I feel like I beat him out for the spot. So come Texas, I was one of the starting 5 guys. And I remember I was definitely the weak link for sure on the shooting. I would take forever to shoot. I remember being so scared to miss because in that competition, it's 30 seconds a miss.
Oh, that's a big penalty. Yeah.
So I remember just kind of sitting there and just sitting
taking your time.
It's like
whatever I do, don't miss.
Don't miss. So that whole competition, I didn't miss a shot, which was good because we did well. We didn't win, and that was the hardest thing was going back to work.
Not being a champion.
Oh, it was hard. Guys were like, "Hey, man, like good job," and you could tell the disappointment in their tone.
Mm.
I remember I just didn't want to go to work that whole week.
It's kind of a Texas thing too, man.
Oh,
like
yeah.
in terms of you think about football and how it's like that in other places in the country too. But like the community does really rally around the teams, the colleges, the high schools, you know, whatever it is that they happen to be competing at. So
I just remember training so hard for that. We spent all day at the range, and it would get dark, and we would have to pick up brass with our lights on because we were there all day. Mm-hmm. But we didn't have the experience that other teams had. We just went into it with like a bunch of young dudes that were all the same amount of time on the team as me, just kind of blindly and just didn't know what to expect. And we would win an event, then we'd come in like 15th because of procedurals or missed shots. Then we'd win an event, then it'd be like 10th.
Sounds like the Raiders. Can't seem to get their shit together. Yeah.
And then I remember kind of going in the off season, was like, hey, I need to get better individually.
Uh-huh.
So I started researching competition shooting.
Okay.
So that's when I found out the first comps I did was running gun. It's where it's basically like a biathlon. You run a mile, shoot a stage, run a mile, shoot a stage. And got into some USPSA style shooting, which is steel challenge in a way.
Uh-huh.
And I realized how bad I was when you see civilian shooters.
Just burning it down.
I just shot around cops the whole time I've been shooting.
Okay, got you.
And that was a huge, like, I was like, whoa, there's dudes on a different world than the guys I thought were on a different world. I was like, these guys are way better than me. I remember I was like, I will never get close to that good. And in my mind, I was like, these guys are like, I don't know how they got so good. I didn't know how. In my mind, I was like, what do I have to do to get that good?
Yeah, how do you train to get that way? Yeah.
Exactly. And,
so where does that journey take you?
It takes me on a huge roller coaster ride of failures, of signing up for competitions, just not being scared and putting myself out there. And then came prepared for the next year's TTPOA with like so much energy to want to win, and we won. Then that brought us to SWAT Roundup, and that's where I heard about the tactical games.
Yeah, so talk about SWAT Roundup. SWAT Roundup is what? It's the best teams in the country?
Oh, for sure. Mm-hmm. That is in my opinion, that's my favorite competition because it requires a lot of speed, athleticism, and practical style shooting because it's just fast. It's like you can't even think during the event. If you think you're slow. And you get teams from Hungary, Jamaica, Brazil.
Oh shit, this is international.
It's SWAT Roundup International.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought we were talking just here in the US.
Yeah, so my first year there, I think there was 15 international teams.
Okay.
And went into it knowing what to expect because guys on our team, prior competition team guys,
had been there before.
So they told us like, yeah, you're going to hate it there because you're going to do good in one event, like in all the events, and one bad event is going to cost you.
Yeah.
And I hate it. We had a bad first year, and it was rough coming back home because we went there with high expectations of winning again. Mm-hmm. And we did very bad that first year, and there was a guest speaker there named Tim Burke, who was the owner of the tactical games at the time, and was in the room he was talking. He was a guest speaker, and he started talking about this physical fitness competition. I instantly Googled it. I was like, what's the heck's the tactical games? I remember the front page was a guy holding farmer's carry handles. And I was like, I've never seen this before. And it quickly drew my interest. And I researched schedule, and I saw they were coming to Reveille Peak Ranch in March, which is in Texas, 2 hours from my house. So I told my wife, I was like, hey, we're going to this. And I signed up, and I was really, that's where it started. Yeah.
How did you do?
So
speaking about not knowing how to train for something, like going back to the shooting piece, tactical games is pretty novel in that sense because it's not just running and shooting, you know, or again, steel challenge matches where you're staying static and, you know, whatever. This is very, very different in a lot of ways. And I think it got compared to things that I don't think was necessarily a fair comparison because people are trying to connect dots on the whole thing, right? You know, the word tactical gets used in it, so that automatically brings things with it, and people are going to look at it or think about it maybe a little bit differently. I wonder, how did you prepare for this?
So backtrack a couple of months. My wife was a runner. She was like, "Hey, I want you to run the San Antonio Rock and Roll Marathon with me." So I had been training, half marathon. So I've been training for that. And I was running like 6:30 mile pace for 12 miles. Yeah. So I felt really good. Then I run one in Louisiana in February. The next month is tactical games. So I went into it thinking I was in really good shape. I was only in shape for one thing.
Yeah, for running.
And I was a lot skinnier because I'd been running a lot. The first event was a heavy sled drag. All we were doing was dragging a sled with I don't know how many plates. That I was so gassed. And back then I remember I was like, what did I get myself into? It's like, what did I just do? Like, this was the hardest thing I've ever done while shooting. I remember my heart rate was so high. I had to shoot and bring the gun in. I had to shoot, bring the gun in because I could not keep the gun up because I was so tired. The lactic acid I felt through my body. And I got done. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to withstand this whole weekend. I told her that. It was crazy. Like,
you ready to go home before it's ended?
I told her, I was like, I'll be lucky to be in the top 10 of this competition.
Wow. How did it work out?
Took third.
Did you?
Yeah, I took third. and I missed, if I would have missed one less shot, I would have taken first. Like, that's one of the few times I haven't podiumed, and it still eats me alive to this day is those things that win. It's like one of those times where you're like, one more hit and I would have won, or being 10 seconds faster here, I would have won.
This is the competition, and I think even more, it's getting tighter and tighter as the thing continues to evolve. Let's talk about that. So, all right. So I assume at this, like the bug has bitten you at this point, like with regard to the tactical games, like you're so close yet so far. Yeah. And, you know, it's kind of this new experience. You'd been beat up, you'd been handed a big piece of humble pie in a way.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so this is where I wanted to get to just in terms of your training, because you do so many things in this space with firearms and fitness, and you've done a lot of things and competed at basically the highest level. I mean, as of recently, the team went to SWAT Roundup in Dubai.
Yeah, so Dubai has their own competition that they started, I want to say 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And because we won SWAT Roundup last year, we got an invite to go there. And it was just us in New York, was it New York Police Department SWAT team. And they paid for everything for us to go. And it was...
What an opportunity.
Crazy opportunity.
How was that?
Unbelievable. It was, kind of thinking back to when I was playing baseball and getting to the academy, I would have never thought this opportunity would have happened. Yeah, you would ask me then, like, what are you going to do as an officer? Like, oh, I'm going to be a detective, and do like this, Would have never said, hey, I'm going to be on a SWAT competition team and go travel to Dubai and compete on a world level. It was unbelievable. I
think, so again, I'm just kind of looking at this, and you've competed in the areas that you compete in. We can talk about maybe other stuff like the USPSA. I think you some PCSL stuff. PRS stuff that you're doing as well. You really are competing at a lot of different things at a very high level. And I think for me, that's pretty rare. Like, I think there's a lot of people that do a lot of things that might be very good at it, but you're actually going into these competitions and posting times and being competitive with the people that have entered into the competition of whatever that is. Again, and when we talk about like the SWAT side of things, and that's obviously that's unique in a lot of ways. And then people see you competing in the tactical games, and you are extraordinarily competitive there. I mean, if Sal shows up to the games, you're in a competition with Sal, right? Like at this point, like you're competing to beat Sal a lot of times. There's a lot of great competitors out there. I've just recently really been paying more attention to it, and it's growing very fast. The competition seems to be getting much stiffer.
Oh yeah.
People are learning how to train, and a lot of that is like learning how to shoot. I think that's the biggest missing piece, and train for shooting.
That's what kind of drove me into some of the USPSA and practical shooting stuff.
Now let's talk about that, like the crossover there.
Yeah, so like, a lot of the internet talk is, hey, cops can't shoot, or hey, tactical games athletes, terrible shooters. And I was like, okay, hold my beer. I'm going to go jump into this. And I put myself out there. I'm not worried to do that. I'm not worried to get my butt kicked. I've been humbled several times, and what's one more thing that's going to humble me, Right. And went into USPSA, got my butt whipped, and I was like, hey, I can be pretty good at this stuff. I'm kind of athletic, and I can shoot pretty decent. It just came down to stage planning, and got obsessed with it, and got really, really good, and made M-class, I think, in 8 months or something, and then competed in a lot of major matches and did very well.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting thing too. Is there's this hard divide a lot of times. What I see with, well, it's not the same. No, it isn't the same. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean one doesn't complement the other. Or one thing when I say that, like the USPSA to tactical games, like I think the people that I mean, you're the example, right? Like you're competing in the tactical games at a very high level. So there's physical, and there's also obviously the practical shooting piece of this part. Like. And you're using the different things that are out there to improve across the board versus choosing, I do this one thing and I do just that thing. And that there's sometimes I think a large assumption that somehow this makes you better at all the things.
It does. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, not really painting the picture painting the picture is that it really helps me with work and being able to help the guys I work with and officers that I teach across the nation.
Talk about that, yeah.
So I really think that competition shooting and all those competitions that you mentioned, they've all had little parts of this puzzle that have helped me explain things better when I'm teaching classes or helping out my coworkers or even helping people that come down. So me and my wife, we love hosting people at our house to come train. We love having people that are newer into tactical games or newer into shooting, or even high-level shooters that come down and just train from us, and we share knowledge. And all those competitions that I've done, I've been able to kind of help them find ways to train better. And for me, it's about not only, like if Hepner came down, he's one of the biggest, one of my biggest competitors in tactical games. So if he came down and trained, I would share everything with him, because if he gets better, that's going to push me to get better.
Sure.
So my mindset is, hey, I want everybody to get to a level where it's like Formula One. It's like you're winning by like 1/10 of a second. It's that close of a race, because that's going to push me to be focused on every second of that competition.
Yeah, I think that's what I was saying about the evolution of this right now. There's pretty large gaps there, and what it takes is for people to get into it and go through the butt whippings, if you will, the suffering and the losses and the quote unquote failures, to ultimately understand the successes, and then collectively, one way or another, you saw this through other sports, and I'm bringing this one up not to compare it, but I think in terms of the evolution of the sport and kind of how it happened, CrossFit was sort of like that, right? Mm-hmm. Where it was like a grassroots type of thing that was. People were trying to understand. I think it was very misunderstood by the majority, quite frankly, of people that got into CrossFit. But those that were trying to compete at the games, what you saw was this evolution. There were huge gaps, at the beginning between those winning and those, quote unquote, being competitive that were at the games, in the end. But that got tighter and tighter and tighter. In fact, we had it on the TV the other day. I haven't watched the games in a long, long time. It's gotten some attention, a little bit more attention lately for some unfortunate reasons. But the point of that is like it is way tighter, and there are way more quote unquote elite athletes in that sport than there ever have been.
And that's how the tactical games is right now.
That's what I'm seeing. Yeah,
it's unbelievable. So like 2019, 2020, kind of the dinosaur years of that, and kind of. It's
figuring it out.
It's shifted so much since then. 2021, 2022 got a little bit more competitive. And then last year and this year, the results, especially this year, like I think the last competition, me and my wife competed together, we only won by 6 points, which is like a couple misses. Then prior to that, me and Anthony competed together and we only lost by a couple points. And then like, I think I lost to one guy by 2 points in an event. Then I only won by like 4 points in an event. Before it was like, you'd win by like 30 or 40 points. And the second place and third place would be just dropping down.
And what is the what do you see has been how do I phrase this? What do you see has been the closing of that gap, or where is it now? Is it the fitness piece that people were separating the points thing? Because I understand the scoring and stuff and how it works. Or is it the shooting piece? Or is it a little bit of both and people still trying to figure out both? Or is it just one that way more outweighs the other in terms of the gaps and who's winning and who isn't?
So the biggest thing that I've seen was we've always shot irons on pistols in the dinosaur years, and back then, I've been shooting red dots. So when we were shooting irons, I was like, I have to compete with the iron sight pistol and the tactical games. What the heck? I was so mad. And that's what almost
seems a little weird.
I almost didn't want to compete in it because of that reason. I didn't even own an iron sight pistol. So I was like, I have to go buy a freaking Glock and learn how to shoot irons again. And it was always a big turnoff for me with shooting irons. And I think a lot of people that are new into shooting have a hard time learning with irons. When I teach people now, I prefer to teach them on a dot because they can actually see and give me feedback on what the dot is doing when they're pressing the trigger. So now that they voted on red dots last year to use them this year, guys are learning how to shoot pistols better. And that's what I think is really making the competition close, is because guys realize, look, wow, I am really pushing the gun down every time I'm pressing the trigger.
Right.
I can see my dot going down. Wow, like I need to relax this grip a little bit. Now I know how to shoot better. And this year I've seen the pistol shooting really tighten up with guys that didn't do that last year and the year before. And to me, that's what's really closed the gap, because guys have always been fit. Guys have always been really good on the physical fitness side, being able to finish stages fast, but they would have a lot of penalties and misses, mostly pistol.
That's interesting. I guess I kind of knew that intuitively, but, you know, like it would make sense that people would get more accurate with, you know, with putting the newer technology on their firearm, right? Yeah. But what I heard you just say right there was how the technology has helped them understand what they're doing, or in this case, I could say this, I think in air quotes, what they're doing wrong, or what they could be doing better, however you want to look at it, to then step back to correct that to become a better shooter versus struggling through trying to figure it out a different way, which maybe you still get to the same place in the end, but how much faster you can get there.
Your shortcut, you know, it's basically a huge shortcut to get to here, versus here it's like, I learned this, and it's like finally get there 3 years later, versus now it's like you can just go straight there.
Yeah, so they can match the feedback to what they're doing or what they're seeing and what's happening on paper, right? Versus I see what's happening on paper, and I'm not quite sure, so I have to do a little bit of this, and there's a little bit more trial and error. I think it's an interesting thing. I mean, there's, you know, people have been talking about this. The future is now. Red dots have arrived. Like, whatever. Is there value in iron sights? Sure, but you know, does somebody have to learn how to shoot iron sights before they shoot a red dot anymore? I don't know. Like, we could have. I think it's a good skill to know. Yeah. But how much time do you really spend there? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not going to get into that debate. Like, that's everybody could have their, you know, make an argument for one way or another. When you're competing in games, when you're competing in a sport, which is what this is at the end of the day, you're going to take whatever edge you can that is within the rule set, right? And for a sport that is trying to, for an organization that oversees a sport that is trying to grow and appeal to the masses or whatever, like, probably couldn't have happened at a better time for them probably to approve, to approve the use of dots in these competitions, because why wouldn't you?
Exactly.
You know, why wouldn't you?
And now this year is the first year where I feel like Tactical Games has the best shooters in the world, because it's not just precision, tiny shots. Like, we're shooting out to 600 yards with carbines. We're having fast stages where we're burning it down up close, transitioning to pistol, burning it down. It's a variance of all different types of shooting in those other matches that I would go specifically just for PCSL, PRS, Quantified Performance, USPSA. Now Tactical Games is all of those combined, and you have the best shooters in the world that can do all of those very good. So
that's an interesting, so this goes back to something I was saying before in terms of like making the comparisons, or this is better than the other thing. And that's what I have, that's what I do. One of the bigger value adds, I think, Tactical Games is bringing to the table, which is it's introducing people to so many more things. Because in order to be competitive, or just go out there and do it, you're going to have to understand a lot. You're going to have to understand the rifle, not just the pistol. You're going to have to understand your optics, right? You're going to have to understand, obviously, the fitness piece, building positions, and when you're tired, when you're fatigued after doing certain things, which then turns into like, how do I train for this, and all those kind of things. So I think I think the industry, the firearms industry, has a lot in the training industry, owes the Tactical Games a bit of a thank you. And so I'll go back to that other thing, CrossFit. So I've been in the fitness industry a long time. CrossFit came up when I was, already 10 years into my career, right? And I was very curious about it. And I was watching it, and a lot of us were like, hey, that's pretty extreme. That looks a little weird. Like, what are they doing out there? Like, we're doing 30 snatches for time, and stuff like that. Like, that's not Olympic weightlifting. Like, no, it isn't, right? They're using some type of they're practicing a skill. And look, I mean, for those high level athletes, they were able to do that, be competitive, continue to do it for a long time and whatever else. But for us, like we were trying to connect the dots on what is it that we're looking at here and how much sense does this make? And I'll be the first to admit, I was very resistant to it. And I never subscribed or got into the world of CrossFit, but I started to understand it better because I was studying it. My point of this is as somebody who's made a career in that industry and, you know, owns a gym and trains people and has for a long time, what I owe, and I always have, I've always, you know, paid my respects to CrossFit for what they did in expanding fitness and introducing different things to so many people, particularly females, because it was the first one where it was like, this is where females are doing things other than lifting barbells. Yeah. Right. It was combining all, it was allowing them to, and it was sending a pretty solid message about how to get fit, how to get strong, you know, how to compete, you know, and feel good about it. It was giving them these outlets where they could do it. My point of that being, going back to the tactical games, I think that the firearms industry and the firearms training industry if they haven't figured it out yet, those that may be non-believers, whatever you think about the tactical games, it is bringing a huge, let's just say more pie, right, into the larger pie, right? They're bringing tons of people into the space. Oh, yeah. And it's creating a ton of opportunity for people. And I think that may be getting missed as people are looking at it still going, that's weird. You know, that's not tactical.
In my opinion, it's the fastest growing shooting sports in the world right now.
I don't know what the stats are on that, but you might be very right. Oh, yeah. I would believe it.
And one thing I love is it's getting new gun owners that love fitness the opportunity to kind of have fun doing that process and learning how to be safe first, but also having the ability to, hey, I have this fitness background. Well, let me learn how to shoot, be safe. Now I can compete because I'm retired from CrossFit or Olympic lifting or baseball, you know, and they get to come in and compete and still have that hobby as an adult to kind of learn how to shoot and, you know, still stay fit.
Yeah, I think that's it. There's age classes, right? And, you know, different, you know, levels that you can kind of get into this. It is very friendly to the entry level person, you know, from I guess from an inclusivity type of thing. But it also, there is an elite level that people can compete at. You know, again, I think people, there's kind of a couple of different ways of looking at it. When I first saw it, I wasn't really sure about it. This is what I've heard it described as, again, and I brought this other thing, it's like CrossFit with guns. It is not CrossFit with guns.
Definitely not.
But a lot of people have transitioned over from CrossFit. Again, my understanding and my studying it and being around it for a long time, I'll be first to, again, I never competed in it, never had any desire to. But my point of that is it isn't the same. You'll see things that feel and look similar, but that's fitness, man, right? So going back to the growth of it and the shooting pieces, I think this is another interesting thing. Is it gives a police officer, right, who is very serious about their fitness, but also likes to compete and likes to do it with all the things that they may be required of them on their job, specific to rifles, pistols, distance, you know, quick transitions, all that stuff. It gives them an outlet to go practice their skill in a different way, or just apply all the fundamentals of all the things they've been learning or may have learned, maybe through competition, other types of competitions, but those were limiting, right?
So I'll tell you what, kind of going back to that is, we've done some, you know, we've had some pretty crazy stuff happen at work. And I think training for the tactical games has prepared me for those incidents at work. I remember kind of, you know, we've been in a part of a few OISs, and just being there for those is like, my heart rate felt normal. I was like, wow, like I don't feel like my heart's pounding out of my chest. I don't feel like I am blacked out, tunnel vision. I actually feel like, hey, well, like, this is just like how I train, just like how I do fitness and firearms in the tactical games. And I feel like it's really prepared me and other officers that I know for the job, for critical incidents.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value. I think it can prepare people just in general too, that officers or not, for how to handle certain situations. I think it takes a certain type of person, you know, obviously, I mean, to be competitive or want to be competitive. But what I see and what I've seen and a lot of the people that I've talked to that are getting into it are just grateful to have an outlet to go and do something. And it is a very fast growing, you know, when things evolve that fast, it can be a real challenge, right? And you've been part of this thing from from sort of a very early stage, or at least for the last several years, as you're watching the sport evolve, like where do you, and you've already been very complimentary of it, where do you see like if there's improvements that can or should be made, or that you foresee going, this is just going to be part of the process, we're going to learn this, or we have learned this, and what are those things, if you're just being sort of objective about it?
I think it being in the gun industry, it's going to be hard for it to grow to a world level and a televised level, which would be the ultimate.
Because of guns.
Because of guns.
Hashtag guns. They're bad.
Yeah. I think if it got to that level, that would be the end goal, was to be on that world and televised level where people can watch the sport at home. And the Tactical Games is doing a good job being able to broadcast it on YouTube and, follow athletes in the middle of a stage. But I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, sponsorship pays the bills, right?
Yes.
A lot of times. And so this isn't one of those things where this is another interesting thing. People are not competing. Sal's not going out and winning a Tactical Games meet and taking home a $200,000 cash prize.
Yeah.
So, which obviously is a big driver for people to have compete in other things. Whatever that is, where follow the money. Which speaks to the people that are actually doing this and why they're doing it. Because at the end of the day, like what are you getting from it? Some athletes, I'm sure, are being paid by some sponsors, but that's not, people aren't making a living on the Tactical Games.
No, I have a full-time job that's very demanding. And there's times where I get a call out at 3 a.m. and I get no sleep, and I'm at the range at 8 a.m. training or 9 a.m. training or working out, because it's an outlet for me. It's a way for me coping with the things that happen at work, that I get to go shut that switch down. And now it's Tactical Games and focus and get better. Yeah.
Again, like you have to really want to do this, right?
Oh, yeah.
And the drive to do is just to go compete, get better, try something new. And what I also get is the community there has grown quite a bit. People are very supportive of one another. I had the opportunity of spending some time around you and a few other of the more competitive athletes. Certainly spent a lot of time with Jacob, and the things. And what I get there is, generally speaking, everybody's people are good there to compete, but there's a solid community there, camaraderie of people trying to help. You mentioned like inviting people in and the growth and wanting to see, like, to get together with like Hepner and train with him, because you recognize what that does for you, what it does for him, and what it ultimately does for the sport. It's very early in this process, I think, for the Tactical Games. I actually had Hepner on the show once, and we talked a little bit about this. I think there's a certain level of care that needs to be taken in how fast the thing grows, and that's going to be part of the leadership in the organization. But more importantly, I think the athletes and how they want to see it evolve too. And I see he's been a really big influence there. And also just the attitude that you're coming at it with, I think, is very interesting. I mean, at this point, if people have hung on to this podcast this long, they get how humble you are. And how, the work that you put in and how much you appreciate that as an outlet, right? For what you're doing. It's like, again, you have a full-time job, which I'm going to come back to in a second. But there are so many other people out there that are doing that too, that are trying to contribute at the same time, get back from it, but without an expectation of the Tactical Games owes me, or the sport owes me something, maybe like other more established sports that have been people have been doing for a long time.
And I feel like there has been some athletes that have came in with expectations of that, and the community. There's more good people in that community that outweigh those couple of people that come in wanting, hey, I want these sponsors to sponsor me, and I want this much money, and it's like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, you're looking to take from something that you haven't really contributed to.
Exactly.
Yet. Yeah, and I think that's the novel part of what Tactical Games is right now. It's been around a while. It's not brand new, but it is in this growth stage. And I think in terms of the brand itself, it's trying to change that perception.
And one thing I really like is that Nick and Amanda and Ro, they're the core of the Tactical Games, the owners, and they do a really good job at helping the athletes that have been in the sport a long time, people that have been there the same amount of time as me, people that are well respected in the sport, whether they podium at every event or not, but they are a good ambassador of the sport. So he does a very good job at paying attention to that versus like, hey, this person has 100,000 followers on Instagram.
Got you.
Yeah, so he does a really good job at that, and I respect that because he sees what's true and what's not.
That's an important point. I didn't realize that. That's a good point, a great shout out. Just transitioning back. So back to life as a police officer. Maybe we just talk a little bit about kind of what that is for you now, and then, as we're kind of getting to the end here and wrapping it up, and what the future looks like for you. But so you've already kind of given us your active SWAT team. It's a full-time team?
Full-time team, 25 guys, 3 sergeants, 1 lieutenant.
Okay. And so what are you doing specifically on that team? What's your role?
So my role has been branded into like a co-lead firearms instructor.
Okay.
So I mean, another guy, we take lead, we put on all the firearms days for our team, and we are passionate about shooting. That's why we have that role. He's a very good shooter. If he competed in tactical games, he would do very well. He'd be beating me. But he has family, he has kids, and he just loves being with his family. But basically right now, my role on the team is a firearms instructor on the sniper team, one of the 8 snipers. And that's pretty much my role is on the firearm side, because I'm so passionate about it. And I feel like it's cool because a lot of guys lean on me for advice on how to train. I'm really good at working on guns, so they always ask me to mount optics, change triggers, all that stuff. So
yeah, you're kind of a nerd that way. I found that out about you.
Love working on guns. If I ever leave law enforcement, I'll be working on guns on the side a lot and probably teaching on the side. But yeah, so that's kind of like my role on the team. And I think also I do a good job at pushing guys on the team to work out. I think we kind of talk a lot of crap. It's like if a guy doesn't work out a day, it's like, hey, what's going on? It's just a rest day, huh? You're just gonna take it easy today. And yeah, it's pretty much everybody has their roles on the team. Some guys love movements, and hostage rescue stuff or chemical agent or breachers. But I didn't choose it. I feel like it kind of chose me, which is kind of weird. But I feel like that's like my role on the team is the firearms side.
So going back to the sort of the role as on the 8-man sniper team. Mm-hmm. So again, we're here at Defender Ranch, and I've had time to spend with you out there on the range, and you're pretty good. Turns out you're pretty good. turns out you're pretty good at that stuff.
Oh man!
I wonder how that. Just real quick, just in talking about that, because that is sort of a fast. You mentioned the tactical games and the push that it's making there to push people to shoot longer ranges in different situations. With people are starting to change up their setups.
Oh yeah.
Quite a bit. I talked to Hepner quite a bit about this and kind of where his head was wrapped around like what he's going to carry, what he doesn't carry in competition, that kind of thing. And I wonder if is that how that evolved for you? Is just through the games and like, hey, I think I could be good at this, and then all of a sudden you recognize I'm one of the better guys here to do this, and you get selected for the team. How does that work? To be a sniper.
It's kind of one of those things
was it the chicken or the egg? Is I guess what I'm asking. Was it sniper and then tactical games, or was it tactical games and then sniper?
I was a sniper before I did the tactical.
Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. So I kind of learned. Like I said, no prior experience of hunting or being a sniper in the military. It was just something I thought was very interesting to me, and it would be a challenge and a big journey to learn. And I think that's what kind of drew me to that. And to me, it's still a journey right now. I feel like there's still so much for me to learn hanging out with Jared and talking with him. But to me, that's probably the hardest craft to learn and maintain is that alone. So I feel like my role in the team in doing that is one focus. Like I can't do sniper, chemical agent, hostage rescue. That's just too many things for me to juggle. I still have this craft that I haven't mastered yet. So my job is to be the best that I can be to help other snipers on the team learn this craft just like me. Because like I said, a lot of officers like to have so many things that they're involved with. Like, hey, I want to do vehicle stuff. I want to be canine. I want to do this. And like they have so many things to worry about, but they're only okay at those things versus being a master of that and being able to be a huge impact on themselves and the team. So to me, that's just my mindset is like, I want to be really good at sniping, but also I want to know the craft more than I can shoot it.
So how are you, so this is where I wanted to get to with this. And we talked about like learning how to train.
Oh yeah.
How are you doing that? Like, how are you training for that? Can you walk us through kind of your process or what that looks like with all the things that you're doing? How are you continuing to study and learn?
So early on with learning how to train was actually learning how to shoot. So back then it was really slow. Didn't do any fitness and firearms. Was just going to the range and actually feeling the gun, how to grip it, and just simple things. Competition shooting really taught me how to train through failures. Because if I was training for USPSA, then I'm working on a bunch of target transitions, entering positions, exiting positions, the movement, the flow. That was geared towards that. Then I did PRS, quickly building a position, stabilizing the reticle, making sure that you have a good solid position. Then you have to break out of that position and build another one. Learning that craft. PCSL, 2 guns, having to move around stages with both guns. All those built up a foundation of what I am now. And that has helped me for tactical games. And in tactical games, it's fitness and shooting. So for this last event, me and my wife, we went to the range and we trained in the evenings, and we would do workouts and shooting. So for instance, we would take our bike erg, we would warm up. We would do 1 minute at a moderate pace. We'd shoot 10 rounds rifle, 10 rounds pistol. We'd go through 4 rounds of that. Then our workout would be, hey, we're going to do 500 meters in less than a minute. And she would do 400. And then I'd have a minute to shoot after that, 10 rounds rifle, 10 rounds pistol for 4 rounds. And then we'd have a cool down of like us kind of ironing out some of the things that didn't work out well for us. But we literally just focused on that. And I think going to the range and focusing on 1 or 2 objectives gets you better than focusing on 10 different things.
That's so important.
Like I went to the range years ago, like I would have 10 different drills. I'm like, hey, Ben Steger did this one, you know, and Lucas Botkins did this one, and trying to do all these cool standards, tier 1 concealed, and, you know, and Jedi's black belt. And like you're doing them in one session, but you're not working on the particular parts of that are going to help you get better. And I think for me, it was isolating certain drills and certain things is what helped me. And especially with rifle. Oh yeah, because rifle I feel like was a hole in my game a couple of years ago. Was being able to build a position and be steady for a cadence, like a 10-round sequence. So for us, we train a lot of 10-round sequence to build that position because you have stability and then durability. How durable am I in that position for 10 rounds? Back in the day, we would be shooting 1 to 5 rounds. It's like, oh, we shot 5 rounds, we're good. Well, when your heart rate's up, you see so much reticle movement through a 10-round sequence, and you have to focus on your breathing. And like people say, you don't have to breathe to shoot. I'm like, try having your heart rate at 150 beats per minute through 10-round sequence, trying to control that reticle on a small target at 50 yards. And I think for me was now that I know how to build positions quickly and shoot very accurately, now it's for me, how hard can I push my speed and how accurate can I shoot with my heart rate up? And for me, that's been the journey this year is pushing it to where I'm feeling I can't even stand upright, but I could still find that red line of shooting 2-inch circles at 15 yards and 3-inch circles rifle at 50. And I think that's helped me really just rise up this year as a competitor.
Yeah, I just listened to you walk through that process, and I think people are like, yeah, that sounds like art, but how many people are willing to do it like that?
And then I see the contrary to is guys that are new in the sport, they jump right into that. Yeah. And it's like they can't shoot a pistol at 15 yards with a 60 beats per minute heart rate. When their heart rate gets double that, it's going to get even worse. So the guys that are getting into the sport that are new need to focus on the fundamentals and isolate that more than they need to do the fitness and shooting.
Yeah, what's the rush to get to the end if you don't have the foundation to work? And I think people get anxious. I have gotten anxious going out to the range because my time is so limited. Yep. You know, when I go out there, you want to do all the things when the reality of it is you need to do, you said it, 1 or 2 things really well today. And decide what those things are going to be and stick to that. Don't get bit by the distraction fairy, you know, or whatever else, or think you have to go faster. Like, be satisfied and then measure that over time. Like you were saying, like the 1 to 5 versus the 10 rounds. Like, that's going to tell you a lot more over time. Like, as you're starting to track your progress, that's going to tell you a lot more over time. It's reps, right? It's more volume.
And the way I compare it to is guys that are in the fitness industry. They're like, you know, for your workout, you're going to get a warm-up in, you're going to do a strength portion, and then maybe a Metcon. That's how I gear the firearms training. It's like my warm-up is actually getting on the bike, slow movement, or even non-bike, just getting in position, shooting 10 rounds. Then you do your warm-up, and then the actual strength portion is me, you know, really pushing, really getting after it.
That's the intensity portion.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then that's the way I tell people is like, you need to gear your firearms training almost like you would, you know, program your workout. And to me, it's like you have to have certain weeks where you're focusing on one thing. So like I'll go weeks of just working on rifle, of just, hey, this is how I'm going to build up my rifle, versus going rifle 2 days, pistol 4 days. And like, you're just kind of not balancing that right. And I feel like for me as an individual, it's helped me focus on one thing more. Like I take blocks where I'll do bolt gun stuff for like 3 weeks and I don't really shoot a pistol as much. I'll dry fire.
And periodization.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me, I feel like I've gotten better in those times where I focused on one thing for a short time versus kind of balancing everything else.
I think it's something that people can relate to. This is the thing that I always stacked up. I've always stacked since my firearms sort of journey really started, is comparing it to fitness. Yeah. Right? And the things that it takes the most important thing is consistency, right? There's discipline that's involved there. And part of that is like the discipline outside of the training session, as well as the discipline inside the training session. And the way you just kind of articulated how you put it together, and the other part of that is like, there's going to be times where I'm going to be spending more time on one thing than another. And most of the time it's skill, it's practice. It's not choosing something that challenges me at at a level 10 when I don't need to be challenged at a level 10 with that right now. Challenging myself at a level 2 or 3 right now is plenty. Yep. Right. And so where I take that is understanding what those levels are. And the only way to understand what those levels are is to go through the journey and the process itself. So going back to like training, I see people program hop constantly. They're always looking for the next sexy thing or whatever. It's because, oh, I'm not getting the results I want here, so I'm just going to change the program. It's not the fucking program, man. It's you. You haven't been in the program long enough to know whether or not that program works for you or it doesn't, or what may or may not be working, or what you could or could not be adjusting in terms of toggles, switches, dials, whatever the case. So it's this constant jumping to the next thing, again, by the distraction failure, what they're seeing online, or, the next competition, like, oh, that's what I need to do. Because Sal is doing that. Like, I need to do that in order to compete at this level, which you just very clearly identified all the different things that you're doing and how you're approaching it. And I think that's the mystery and the missing piece that, what we see in the social media or what you're kind of hearing or reading online or whatever it could be, I think that's what escapes people. And I've heard you say in so many words, just how humble you are and how new you think you are to all of this, and how not good you think you are, and how there's all these other people out there that would outshoot you or outperform you physically or whatever else. I think that's part of the process too, and knowing, like, recognizing, like, holy God, this guy, he's got a huge amount of talent, but that's because he's focused his time there, and he recognizes, like, that's important for me to do that. And that doesn't mean he's better than me at all the things, but he's certainly better because that's where he focuses time. It's just like the runner, like you mentioned the running, like you focused on running, so you got really good at running, right? But if you're trying to do these other things, like, and if you're trying to be a faster runner, how would you have trained differently? Oh, yeah. Versus just trying to get through the marathon, right? If you're trying to be faster, well, we're probably not not running a marathon every day. Right? I'm doing some sprints, might be doing some hills, there's going to be some recovery, so some medium distance, I'm going to be working on different things. If you don't understand those things, you have no idea how to put together a training program. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I think kind of like seeing myself as the future of the tactical games progresses. Obviously, I'm not going to be competing at a high level for a long time. I think I'm kind of on the peak and then kind of on the downslope in the next couple of years, as I would really love to help the newer people that come in. Rad. And so they know how to train, so they're not wasting money on ammo and wasting their own time going to the range not knowing what to do. So for me, I'd really love to kind of get back in the sport as like, hey, I want to coach you, and I'm going to coach you to be very good. And those are the people that I like to work with. Obviously, I love helping new shooters, but the people that have came to my house have been really high-level athletes. It's a different conversation. And to me, I'm like, oh, I want to help you become a world champion. Like, I can help you win. And to me, it's been a fun journey, kind of helping those people in their journey. It gives me the chills because one of my coworkers is very good. And I'm like, dude, you're going to win nationals this year. Yeah. They're just like, they're that close. Yes. Oh, yeah. So that's an interesting thing too, what you said about new shooters, because you'll see, so it's like, again, comparing on the fitness side, like the new person is going to exponentially show this result of strength, endurance, power, right? Resiliency is going to come really quick. And then at some point, we're going to reach the ends where that progression doesn't happen as fast. That's the weird part when people start grasping at straws or, I'm going to train like Sal trains. Or again, I said that, like, that's inappropriate for the new person. And it's also probably inappropriate for the person that's working at this other level. You have to identify especially what those things are. And it's a lot of things. Right? Yeah. It's a lot of things. It isn't one thing. You mentioned like your comparison of like USPSA, where it was target transitions, it's movement, right? It's being able to change directions. It's, being able to sight picture and being able to identify. Well, all those things are included, but in a very specific way that happens on the, on the range or in the bay at the USPSA match. You're talking about a lot of other things, right? Oh, yeah. And that's a rabbit hole. Every single one of those has a rabbit hole you can get lost in. Man, just thinking about the hours of time that I've devoted into each of those, it's unbelievable to think about all the rounds and the time. If I just focused on one thing, I think I would have been okay. But I think I just love being able to step into all these different competitions and see how I can do against the better people in those sports. Yeah, that's a whole other thing, is being cool with that and doing it for that reason, right? And then ultimately, like if you can't be competitive, be competitive. Yeah. But starting with like, I just want to see how this goes. Like I just want to experience this, zero ego, you know, or let's be honest, there's an ego there, right? But you're not going to go home with it bruised and battered and angry about it. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I didn't like the way that felt. What can I do to get better kind of thing versus hating. And
that's what I hate about my personality is like, I know that I'm so close in each of those where if I can just devote specific time to that, I know I could do a lot better.
So
it kills me.
You're a busy dude. You got a lot of shit to do, so, which I appreciate. And so just in wrapping up here, I really appreciate you taking time out. I mean, again, we're at this retreat and we've been having an amazing time with the guys, but you know, this has been a long time coming for me. I've wanted to talk to you and get into the depth on the training side of things. And I'm encouraged and excited to hear you say that is a part of where you see yourself going in the future, is helping other people be successful in the things that you've been able to be successful in and take on even that journey, like an understanding, because you're going to go through the successes and the failures of working with athletes there too. And not, but if I'm an athlete, like, or if I'm a client, that's the kind of coach I want to be working with. I to be honest, like I want the person that is still on their journey. That, you know, you go back to the BJJ thing when you said, you know, you competed at a purple belt level. That's up there. You know, for me, it's way higher than I ever got, right? But the bottom line is, like, in meeting the black belts, all the black belts will tell you my journey didn't start until I got my black belt. You know, like it's just begun, kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like now I can go to a range with somebody and meet them for the first time and know exactly how to do their training. And that's what's cool for me now, is being able to step outside the competitor and be the coach. And I'm like, hey, this is how we're going to train. Like, this is what you need to work on. And it's so cool to be able to kind of see that now. And it actually gets me really excited, is being able to be on the range with somebody and help them and share the knowledge that I've learned through the years of failure, winning, losing. And yeah, man, I really love it.
Well, I've been a part of that this weekend, this week and weekend, you know, just in terms of you imparting knowledge. Not just from you telling me things or me listening to you, you know, talk with other people about things, but watching you and kind of how you're handling yourself, and I like from afar watching your process before we were running a bunch of drills and things like that out there, and I could see your mind working and kind of doing working through the problem before you went out, and then through each stage of failure, which there was a lot of this weekend, and some of those things. For sure. Right? Mentally, physically, you know, and then, you know, just with the very little things. Some of the other things. Well, I guess my point of that is you stepping back and being able to unwind what that was and be able to identify, I know exactly what I did right there, or I'm not sure what I did right there. Let's try that again. Right? Like, I'm going to try it this way this time and see what happens, see if I can repeat that. I mean, that's what a great competitor does, but that's what a good coach understands how to do with somebody else. So with that said, just again, wrapping this up, like, so for people that are maybe hearing you for the first time and they're like, who is this dude? Like, and what's he about? But also for the people that have been following you and, you know, or watching watching your journey, and maybe in the future, you know, they have the ability to work with you at some level, or, you know, just have a conversation with you, you know, over the internet or at the next games, or, you know, that you happen to be at. Where do they go, man? How do they find you?
The best way is to actually go to competition. I encourage a lot of LE guys, a lot of people that want to compete, just compete, sign up, do what I did. You know, put yourself out there. And there's a lot of guys just like me that are willing to help you and that also are very good at a high level, that know how to train. So I encourage, you know, sign up for a competition, find one of us at a match. I will help people. In New Hampshire, I was telling all my competitors how I was going to shoot that stage. I was like, this is exactly what I'm going to do, and you can watch me do it. And it worked out, and like, there was no BS. And that's how I encourage people to come find me.
I love that. It's the in-person, like face-to-face.
I don't like texting or DMing. It's like, I want a face-to-face, because like, you actually get to see me and I get to see you, and it's, you know, it's different. There's definitely different vibes there. And I'm a busy guy. I'm not going to lie. Like, you can ask my wife. It's just like nonstop when I get home. And,
I don't know how you're doing it all, to be honest. So that's clear.
Yeah. So it's, you know, it's really hard for me to be so active on
like social media
and text messaging. It's like, dude, I got so much crap going on. And like I said, the best way is to either, hey, Sal, I want to come down and train with you. Let's do it. I'm like, heck yeah. Like, would love that. Versus, hey, what kind of drill should I do here and there? It's like, and I've talked to you about doing a podcast or even a YouTube channel, but even then it's like, I'm so busy.
Time, man.
It's more time that's taken away from me as an individual, taking away time to help others. It's like,
took time away from your wife and having a life and all the things that need to get done. Yeah.
So hopefully in the future, I can kind of find a way to, I guess, balance that. But, you know, I still have, I think, a couple of good years of trying to compete at the highest level. I think after that, it's time to show the world, or I guess not the world, show the industry like, hey, this is what I've done to be successful for these years. Like, I want you to learn how to train.
Give it back.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I love that. I can't wait to watch it continue. I mean, I have the privilege of getting some, I think more insight, on the things that you're doing and kind of watching you. And I feel very privileged to that. Like I said, I've learned so much, but I'm encouraged to watch the journey continue and going with all the things that you're doing over the next couple of years and beyond, man. If there's anything I can do to support or help, or, whatever, I just heard you say the word podcast. If there's a way that I can,
yes,
any of that, I'm not the best at it, but I've done a few things and failed a few times, so I might be able to save you some time, in not buying iron sights and buying red dot style podcast equipment. Anyway, man, thank you for taking time out for me and for your energy today. And like I said, everything that you provided me this week, and I appreciate it. And then, I typically ask this of people I put them on the spot, make them promise me that when we had a conversation like this, I think there's a few more things I'd like to dig into you with, but in the interest of your time and everybody else's, just reserve the right to maybe do this again sometime.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you having me on and being able to tell my story, my journey. And I hope it impacts other SWAT guys out there, because it is a huge outlet from work.
I think it will.
Yeah,
I think it will. And interestingly, we just did another podcast with Jake, on the In Extremis performance side of things. And, we talked a little bit about some of that and what that means for you, just being on the team, and that being an outlet as well to give back, test your skills in teaching, and but give back specifically to law enforcement, the things that you've gained and learned, and that it's more than just the shoot. So this is the point I want to make, and that is, it's more than just the shooting. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what I'm getting from. It's not just shooting and fitness.
Yeah.
You can boil it down to that if you want, but there's a lot more depth here, and you're not going to get that from Instagram. Right. You're not going to, you're not going to get that from a very transactional type of conversation, about equipment or whatever else. That is the face-to-face. That is the time you get to spend with dudes like you. And that's what needs to happen more. And I think those that get in front of you will recognize the value in that, like I have, if they take your advice, which is go sign up for a competition, then come over and say hi.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks again, man. I appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, Scott.
Safe travels going home.
Yes, sir. Thanks.